Hi everybody.
One take.
Start.
One take,
Right,
we said.
We're going to do this. 3, 2, 1. Back in the room.
Hi everybody, it's another Ed and Ed video, and this time we're at Grimsthorpe Shooting Ground, and I'm Ed Lyons from Flint & Partners Optometrist in Wolverhampton. He is
Ed Solomons from Leicestershire in Ingoland.
and
I'm Simon Sommerfeld from Bergen in Norway.
Simon is a client that we've taken on over the last sort of year, 18 months, something like that.
Yeah, something
so
like that.
how did you come to start working with us?
Well, I started shooting sporting clays seriously in February 2019.
Mhm.
Then proceeded to read and watch everything that I could get my hands on. But at some point I kind of plateaued and I was looking for, okay, what can I optimize, what can I look for? And then stumbled upon you guys through research, actually.
Yeah, and you've had sort of a background in sort of performance sports.
Yes.
From sort of like high school, university, and then sort of early sort of adult life.
Yes.
And I think from your previous sporting pursuits, you've been looking at marginal gains and anything to try and optimise your performance.
Yeah.
And you reached out to me mainly to discuss the eye dominance issues and how you could maybe make your visual performance work better.
Correct, yes.
So we had a consultation over Zoom, over FaceTime in the middle of COVID, and we worked on a bit of the vision training sort of stuff, and then you came over to the UK and we combined an assessment with me with some training from
Yep,
Ed.
some technical stuff as well. That was an interesting combo, wasn't it, really?
Yeah.
And what have you sort of found that you've needed to do to sort of tailor Simon's kind of coaching?
So the eye dominant stuff in effect was more of an Ed thing. Simon's got a very sort of small interruption from his left eye, a bit of interference rather from his
Yep.
left eye. So right-handed, right eye dominant, but with a little bit of play from the left, which comes in on certain targets. So Ed's dealt with working around that with a shot spot, which I
Yep.
think you've now settled on the sort of like 0.8. Is it 0.8?
Yeah,
you're on
0.8 or 1, like we are working gradually up from
Yeah, so
0.6 upwards. Yeah.
Yeah, so trying to thin it down a little bit. The biggest thing for Simon, I think, was the different presentation of targets that we see over here compared to what you see over in Norway. So
Yeah.
Norway, there's a lot of shorter, faster stuff, short pictures, smaller, faster gun movements,
Correct,
which
yes.
doesn't necessarily translate to what you're going to see all the way through the international stage. So working on some of the longer movements, refining pull away. So you shot a lot of pull away, but I would say you probably applied it rather different when we first started working. So
Yeah.
tuning that down, understanding length of move, connecting earlier, longer, slower moves away, which on a sort of a consistency basis seems to have worked really, really well for you on the bulk of targets, doesn't it? That seems to have been a big,
Yeah,
big change
that's correct. So let's say it's about understanding, okay, what subsystems make up a sport, make up a performance. Yeah, you have subsystem gun, which you can technically understand. You have, let's say, subsystem eyes, which you have to get an expert for to understand. And then once I had this out of the way and understood, okay, what does my vision look like, then I could start to work on technique, and then the subsystem of technique, how to apply a move, how to tactically approach a target, how to take gun speed out, which is induced, of course, by shorter windows, faster, more energetic shots that we mainly see in Norway, and then kind of widen the portfolio and get the last 10% of the targets through consistency also. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean the eye dominant side of things was quite interesting because for you it's subtle, and it's something that I'm pretty confident we're going to be able to train out over time. So on the recent video that we've done with TGS, we've talked about some of the eye dominance training, and for some people who have a physiological or a pathological or a refractive or even a neurological issue, then that eye dominance cannot be trained. But when we've got a subtle, discrete little bit of interference, I think with yourself using things, a really simple system like the shot spot, where you introduce a level of occlusion which you can then gradually reduce, with a little bit of the eye muscle work, I think it's something over time that we can pare down. So with the shot spot, you've got a 0.3, a 0.6, a 0.8 and a 1.0, and the smaller the number, so the 0.3 is the most opaque, it's the densest, it's the grossest way of chopping out that visual acuity, and the 1.0 is almost letting all of that visual data come in. So at the moment you're sort of around that 0.6 to 0.8.
Yeah, 0.8 on most of the lenses.
And I think once we start to make those little changes, then we can sort of start to strip that out over time. It's interesting when we do that, though, that our perception of the targets, our perception of eye-barrel target relationship will change. So sometimes when we make these little adjustments, we have to put the lead through the barrel and relearn those pictures a little bit. Hello, little one. So that's what we're working with Simon. Again, you've shot to a pretty decent standard in a pretty contracted time, particularly with COVID being sort of interrupted. So you kind of hit in that sort of high 80s, 90s kind of area.
Yeah, it depends on where. Like, you have to see it in the environment which you shoot in, right? So let's say in the Norwegian environment, I was able to get to a decent standard quickly. I work with a Norwegian coach, Jon Hockedal, who's been around the world and shot a little bit, but at some point he said, you need to see somebody in England, right? So that was when I was shooting in the mid-90s in Norway. But of course, that's Norwegian targets. All our orange targets, you know, we don't have these open windows that you guys see. And then he said, okay, you need to see somebody abroad, and that's how I got here.
Yeah. So what when you guys kind of meeting up next? Have you got any plans to come back over?
Well, yeah, I'll try. You know, like I was now over 3 times within 1 year, or within 10 months, and I will try to come back as soon as possible. Every half year or so, you know, because whenever you're introducing changes into a movement pattern, it takes some time for the muscle memory to develop. You actually have to train it and really internalize, and that's also something which there's such a depth of knowledge here that. To truly and deeply understand, you can't just brush past it. You need to really spend the time, get it in the system, grind it in, and then you can take on the next step and the next step.
And I think that's where you go through the phase of sort of relearning something consciously, where at the beginning it's a new movement, it's a new process. You consciously have to grind through the gears and say where it does feel good and it does feel awkward. The key thing is always understanding in the long game, why am I doing this? And if you can understand why that's going to help in the long run, you're much more likely to practice it in training. You know, you're very disciplined with your training. And the other thing is, obviously, said that we all keep in contact pretty regularly, don't you? So when Simon's doing work, when we've been doing work on either a technical or an eye dominance thing, myself, Ed, and Simon are actually in regular contact with each other, as we are with all of our customers. Really, when you're working in a team with people, you need to have the feedback so you can stop people going down potentially wrong paths, and keeping on top of things rather than just saying, right, go away for 3 months, 4 months, shoot, and then come back and realise you've actually misunderstood some of the processes. That doesn't happen by keeping on top of it, which I think is part of why it's much more of a long-term relationship when you're doing these kind of jobs rather than just a turn up, have a lesson and pack them
It's
off.
like assisted focus in a way, right? So let's say coaches help you to identify, okay, what's performance critical for you, and maximize and capitalize on that. So you don't get distracted by. I mean, we've had many conversations over different lens filtrations, over chokes, over ammo, over guns, you know. But at the end of the day, you know, you're still the shooter's the element that you need to learn to control and that you need to learn to focus on, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And this is where we've talked about lenses for you and almost trying to keep things to a smaller, more manageable collection rather than sort of just because something is new, having to add that to the equipment. Yes, it's nice to have nice stuff, but sometimes shooters can get a little bit obsessed with the marketing side of things and having to buy the brand new formulation. And I think with you, what have you got? 4 or 5 lenses at the most?
Yeah, I have four or 5, you know, but for me that's more than enough, you know, just to reduce, you know, I've not changing chokes much either, you know, just stick with one thing and try to work on the stuff that needs the most work, which is the technique and the movement actually.
And again, one thing when you are using the shot spots is making sure that if you have got 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 different lenses, that the positioning and the placement of the shot spot is exactly the same, because if you're introducing different variables such as where that occlusion comes in, then it's going to change potentially the relationship of your head on the stock. So as with all things, consistency is key. What we're trying to do here with these joint sessions is make sure that somebody's visual system is optimized, all of the visual side of things is then taken out, and the coaching can then sort of team up with how that person sees. And so far it seems to be working pretty well for you.
Yeah, maybe one small advice on the shot spot from my side. What I have done is I have placed one accurately, and then I've taken the coordinates on the glass, like XY coordinates, so all the other shot spots on any successive lens can be placed precisely. You can just take an erasable marker, place the shot spot, then you're always in the same
German
spot.
efficiency. And on that unplanned note, we'll bid you adieu. And any comments or anything, as usual, just comment below if there's anything you want us to talk about. We'll do our best not to screw it up. So have a good one.